Hey everyone, welcome to my video for my retrofit of my spare tire and toolkit for my 2018 Volkswagen Mark 7.5 Golf R. So what we're going to be doing today is retrofitting a spare tire into this car. So from the factory, the 2018 Golf Rs, when you open up the trunk, you're going to see that there is no spare tire. So if we just go here, pull up the cargo floor here, you can see the only thing down here is looks like a space that would accept a spare tire, except the only thing you see here is the Fender subwoofer for the audio system, and then you see this little kit on the right hand side. So this kit is Volkswagen's answer to having a flat on the side of the road. So if you watched my 2018 VW Golf R review video that I did on the car, you know that I was complaining that there was no spare tire in the car, and I got a couple of comments back saying that, you know, I've driven cars for 20 years and I've never had a flat, so you don't really need a spare tire, etc. And most cars today do not come with a spare tire. A lot of them come with this little kit, which I'm going to show you in a second. But just to kind of refute what those comments were saying, I had purchased this car from the dealer on a Saturday, and the only place I drove it was on the test drive, and then I drove it directly from the dealer to my house, which is only a couple miles away. And I went in to get some dinner, came out, rear tire was completely flat. So somewhere along the line I had run over a big screw, and now I'm sitting there in the driveway having only owned the car for like 3 hours with a completely flat tire. It's Saturday night, the dealership is closed. Sunday they're closed, so I have a car with no spare tire and can't do anything with it till Monday morning. So basically it would have been nice if a spare tire was in here. Now, there are a lot of cars today that come with these little, what they call mobility kits, which are supposed to be your answer to a spare tire. And, you know, some of the cars, like for instance my BMW M4, if you pulled up the cargo floor, you'd see there's no place to put a spare tire, even if there was one available, because of the design of the body of the car. So they would actually have to put the spare tire in the trunk itself and take up the trunk space to have a spare tire in that car. So in that car, just because of its design, there is no choice. I'm not saying the toolkit's any better, because it isn't, but there is no choice for a spare in those cars. So pretty much you're going to call roadside assistance whenever you have a flat, no matter what it is. On these cars, however, what irked me was that Volkswagen does design these cars for a spare tire. There is a spare tire and toolkit if you purchase this car in Europe or Canada. So it's the exact same car in Europe and Canada, except for the fact that when it comes into the US, they don't provide you with a spare tire. Instead, they provide you with this mobility kit. Okay? So why do they do that? Who knows? I mean, everybody has a theory. It could be just to save on the cost so that the price is lower in the US so people buy their cars. It could be because of fuel economy, to save a little bit of a weight savings on it. I mean, there could be all kinds of reasons, but for whatever reason, Volkswagen does not provide the spare. Even though the car is designed from the factory to have a spare in it, and they have all the pieces to put the spare in it. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to actually be taking all the factory pieces and retrofitting the spare tire into it, just as if it had been purchased in Europe or Canada. So the US spec cars get ripped off with no spare tire, and for me, it's so much easier to pull over the side of the road, and I can change a tire in like 10 minutes very easily. And this mobility kit, which we're going to go over in a second, is, in my opinion, just, you know, ridiculous and worthless. And you'd spend an hour plus on the side of the road realizing it's not going to work, and then you're going to have to call roadside assistance anyway. So that's what we're going to be doing today in our video. So let's first review this mobility kit and what comes in it and what they expect you to do with it. Okay, so here's the mobility kit. So we're just going to open it up here and then we're going to see what's going to be inside this thing. All right, so if we open it up here, you can see we have a couple of tools on the left-hand side here. We got an air compressor and we got this, which is basically a bottle of sealant. Okay, so what's supposed to happen here? Their theory is when you have a flat tire on the side of the road, you're supposed to take this bottle of sealant, and you can see there's a hose on it. You're supposed to take this hose and screw it onto your valve stem on your wheel, okay? Then you're supposed to take this air compressor, and there's a hose on the back of here that you're supposed to attach to this valve. You can see here on the this yellow valve right here sticking out on the side of the sealant. And then you plug this into your 12-volt socket, and what's supposed to happen is you're pumping up your tire with air and it's pushing the sealant into the tire. And so what this is supposed to do is seal around the screw or the nail that you have in your tire temporarily to get you on the road so you can move on. Okay? So there's a couple of problems with this theory. First of all, these have been around for many years now. There's a lot of cars that use these kits, and if you look at some of the people that have tried to use these things, they have a pretty high failure rate of not working. So half the time they don't even work, and you just waste your time with these. Okay. The second thing is, this is only good if you have a screw or a nail punctured into the tread. If you've torn the sidewall of your tire because you hit a pothole or some kind of like debris on the road or whatever it may be, this is no good because it can't seal a rip in the tire. Okay, and these cars have low profile tires on them, so the problem is that they're easily susceptible to like either cracking a rim or bending a rim or something like that, and this is not going to help you. So you're going to have to call roadside assistance in those particular cases. This is only good if you have either a small nail or screw that has punctured the tread of the tire. So first of all, that's the first thing. So you can only use it, maybe a quarter of the time of whatever the damage to the tire is. The second thing is, which is really ridiculous, they want you to basically find the puncture wherever it is in the tire and sort of roll the tire around so that it's at the bottom, so that when you push this stuff in, this stuff settles to the bottom of the tire and will seal around it. And then you start driving it and supposedly it'll spread it around the inside of the tire if you had like multiples or something like that, which is ridiculous. So you're on the side of the road. First of all, you're not going to know where the nail is. You may not even be able to see it. And there's only a very small section of your, if you look on the side here, there's only a small section of your tire, even if you were down on the ground, that you can actually see. The rest is all hidden in the wheel well. You can't tell if there's any nail or something in there. So what are you supposed to do? Keep rolling your car a couple inches until you can finally find the screw or the nail or whatever it is? I mean, when I was trying to find the one that I actually had to roll it a couple times, and I missed it the first time around until I finally found it. So that's sort of ridiculous that they would even like ask you to do something like that, okay? And then you're supposed to do this, and then on the side of the road, like if it's dark or something, and fuddle around with all this stuff. And then the other thing is, if for whatever reason it does work and you get off and you get to the dealership or wherever you need to do to get your tire actually fixed, now you have all this sealant and goo spewed around the whole inside of the wheel and tire that you're going to have to clean out. So I don't know if they would charge you extra for that, but it's going to be messy on the inside of the wheel and tire. That's all going to be cleaned off on the inside of the wheel, and you're probably going to scrap the tire. So what's the point? If you just had a compact spare in the trunk, you could just quickly switch it. Then you could take your other one, put it in the trunk, and then take it to your dealership and get it fixed, and you're on the road. Okay, because it only takes a couple minutes to jack up a car and take 5 lug bolts off, switch the tires, and put a new one on. So this whole theory of these mobility kits is, just BS. That's all it is. It's just a way for them to eliminate a spare and then have some kind of like, oh yeah, this is what you're going to do when you get a flat tire. And it's only going to work, you know, maybe if you're lucky, 1/4% of whatever the situation is that you're in on the side of the road. So this is completely useless. So that is why we're going to retrofit a spare tire into our car. So let's get started. I'll show you first of all the parts that we're going to need to do this spare tire retrofit. Then we'll go through each step, actually putting all the pieces in. And then at the end, I'll give you a complete part list with their part numbers of what you need and where I purchased them, so that you can do the same thing on your car. Now, this is for a 2018 Golf R Mark 7.5, which is the facelift version. I can't comment on the other Golf versions like the GTIs, etc., because I actually don't know what they have in them. Like the Golf S and the SEs, they actually may have a spare tire, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure if it varies by model or if it's just all US models don't get a spare. But you would know in your car what you have, and then you could do the same thing to retrofit this in if that was the case. So let's get started. Okay, so here's our parts list of parts that you will need to purchase. So the first thing you're going to need to purchase is this big foam piece right here. This is called the lower toolbox. Second thing you're going to need to purchase is the jack itself, so you can jack up the car. This is a pinch weld jack. Third thing is going to be the jack handle to actually jack it up. The lug wrench. And then of course the spare tire. This is an 18-inch compact spare. And then the last piece is this trim panel right here. And so this trim panel is the one that will accept the spare tire. It's exactly the same as the one that's in the car, but it has the cutout at the bottom to accept the 18-inch spare tire. So those are the 6 pieces that you'll need to purchase separately, and you can get them from various sources. I'll have a sheet at the end that will show you the part numbers and where I got them from and how much they cost. There's 3 other tools that actually come with the car in the mobility kit that you don't have to purchase. So and those also fit in the toolbox when we're done with our installation. So those are the pieces that we're going to need to do our retrofit. Alright, so let's start it. Okay, so now that we have our parts list and we've got all our parts, now we're going to actually start our first step. So first thing you want to do is remove a couple things from the boot of the car. And we're going to remove this package shelf right here. And then we're going to remove the cargo trunk. Okay, so those just pop out. So on the package shelf, you just remove the little hangers here, and then you just pop it out, and it comes right out, and just set that aside. And then you're going to remove the trunk floor. So again, that just pulls up and out. Very easy. And just set that aside also. And then the third thing we're going to take out to give us a little room here is the fender subwoofer. So again, that's pretty easy. All you're going to do here is disconnect this connector right here. So there's just a little tab right here that you push down and it pops right out. Okay, and then you're going to unscrew this big nut here, and then just take out the subwoofer. Alright, now, again, this video is for a 2018 Golf R. If you have a Golf that is not an R, you have a SE or GTI Autobahn edition, you may or may not have this threaded post and this nut, because if you don't have the Fender audio system, you're not going to have the subwoofer in the back here. And so you may have to buy those 2 additional pieces if you don't already have them in there. So again, if your car doesn't come with a spare and you need to hold the spare down, you're going to need those 2 pieces, which are readily available on the same websites that I'm going to post at the end, so you can easily get it. But don't forget those 2 pieces if your car doesn't have it already in it. Alright, so now that we have that out, we're going to install our first piece that we need to install, which is the lower toolbox. Okay, so this is what they call the lower toolbox from the parts list that we had. So it is a piece of very high density polyurethane foam. So it's a really high quality piece of foam. It's not cheap foam. It won't fall apart. It won't disintegrate over time from age. Really tough stuff. And you know, you can't really break it. If you're thinking about just going down to Home Depot or Lowe's and getting a piece of white foam and cutting out the slots, you're wasting your time. Because one, it's not going to be strong enough to hold the heavy tools. Two, it's going to look like crap. And three, it's just going to disintegrate and fall apart over time and create a mess in your trunk. So this part was like $19. So come on, guys. Just, you know, if you're going to do the retrofit, do it correctly and get the correct factory part. So this is a Volkswagen factory part that's designed for this car. You can see on the left-hand side here, it has all the cutouts here for the tools. On the right-hand side is for the jack. And then on the back here, when you get this, what you're going to find is they have these sort of two pads, one on each side. Okay? Now, when it comes from when you get the part, it's going to have a little rubberized pad adhered to these little sections right here inside these squares. Now, whether you take that pad on or, leave it on or peel it off is going to vary by what you have in the trunk of your car. So, for example, in my car, you can see I actually have, put this up here, a carpeted surface in the car. So if you have the carpeted surface, you want to remove those little rubberized pads because they're going to actually interfere with it sliding into its slot in the car. If you have sheet metal, so if you don't have any carpeted floor pan in your car and it's just sheet metal, you want to leave those on because they take up the gap between the lower toolbox and the sheet metal to keep it snug inside the car. So it's just going to vary. If you try to put this in with the pads on it and you have a carpeted bottom, what's going to happen is this front end here, when it's on the floor, is actually going to be tilted up just a little bit on the front here. And the problem is, if you notice these triangular raised sections here, that's where the cargo floor rests on to support it. So that would be up a little bit and your cargo floor wouldn't lay flat. So you want to make sure that this lays flat on the bottom of the cargo floor so that, on the bottom of the trunk floor, right? So that you can make sure that your cargo floor that goes on top of it lays completely flat like it should. Okay, so if you're doing this on a 2018 Golf R, you want to remove it. You want to remove the little rubberized pads. And they come right off. They'll just peel right off. You can see there's no residue or glue on there. They don't have a very strong glue on them. They come right off if you need to. So just keep that in mind. But leave them on if you have a sheet metal floor in your trunk. You want to leave them on so they take up the space. Otherwise, the toolbox will be too loose in the car and it'll want to move around a little bit. Now you can also, like if for some reason they were missing, you could also just put like a little felt pad or Velcro strip or something like that on there to take up the space if you needed to. Okay, but this is going to be the first thing we're going to put in the car. But actually, before we do that, there's a couple of things that I modified on this before we put it into the car. So if you remember on our mobility toolkit that we had, open it up here, you remember we had this little air compressor that was part of that kit, right? So this is actually kind of handy to have in the car in case you ever need to just pump up a tire that's maybe low, or suppose you did get a flat on the side of the road and you forgot to keep your spare inflated properly, and now you have a spare that is low. So you could actually then pump it up with this if you're on the side of the road. So this is, a nice little electric air pump that you should keep in the car. So luckily, in the toolkit here, there's a couple of spots. You have these three sort of cubbies here that are open that you can put stuff in. So because of that, we're actually going to fit this air pump into that. And so here's what you're going to do. You're going to take your air pump, you're going to put it, which obviously this is the biggest area right here, and all I did was I put it here and then I scored a mark here, and then I used a hobby knife to cut a notch out, which, let me get a close up here, but all I did was cut a notch out right here so that it would fit right in. And the nice thing about this is a high density foam, so it doesn't fall apart. It gives you nice clean cuts. As long as you're using a nice sharp hobby knife that you can cut with, you'll have no problem. And it looks factory. You can't even tell that, you know, I used a knife to cut it. Now if you look at the pump, you'll see that as you're looking at the side of it, it's actually, get a better view here, it actually angles up a little bit this way. Okay, it's not completely square, which is nice because you can use that angle to use it as sort of a wedge to put it into the foam. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this, and one of the sides is a little bit longer than the other, so I fit it into the box that would fit, and then I cut that square out, and you can see it fits right in there now. And so I can store my pump in there and have it in case I need it. But you notice it's upside down because I'm using the wedge, the angle, to wedge it in so it stays nice and steady and it doesn't rock around and move around inside the toolkit. So if you cut that little corner out there, then you can put your pump in there from your mobility kit. The other thing I do is, on all my cars, instead of using the standard lug wrench that comes with the cars, I always have a breaker bar in my car. And I'm going to show you why I do that. So let me go grab those two tools. Okay, so here are the two tools. We've got the standard lug wrench from Volkswagen, and then we've got my breaker bar right here. So if you look at the difference between these two tools, obviously you can see that the lug wrench is much shorter. So you're going to have a lot less leverage when you're trying to break your lug bolts free. And if they've been tightened up by your service department or some shop that over tightened them with an impact wrench or something, they could be really hard to break free. Okay? You're not going to have as much leverage because you don't have the length. The other thing is, if you notice, this has sort of a curve to it here instead of a 90-degree angle like the breaker bar does. That curve, it actually lessens your torque and your leverage also. And it's actually, if you look at it, like if this was the exact, say, straight angle here from the lug bolt, you can see how much it angles out. When something angles out like that, it wants to roll off the lug head, and basically that's how things happen. Like it slips off when you're trying to break it loose and you crush your hand against the car or the ground, chew up your hand. You can also slip off and actually hit the body of the car and damage your car. Now can you imagine if you have a brand new car and that thing slipped off and you damaged the body, you put a big scratch or put a big dent right at the fender there because it slipped off. So these are not very effective. So I always buy, that's I think a 24-inch breaker bar, and then I have a deep well socket on it so that it covers the entire head of the lug bolt, and there's no way it's going to slip off. It's not possible. And it's a pivoting head here, so you basically can get it as close to a 90-degree angle when you're trying to break it loose on the car. So I always have one of these in the car instead of the lug wrench. Now I bought the lug wrench just because, one, I don't like to have missing pieces in the toolkit, so I still bought it so it's in the toolkit. And plus, if I ever sell the car in the future, then I leave that factory lug wrench in there and I take my breaker bar out. So, but having said that, I need a place to store this new breaker bar and socket, and so I did the same thing as I did with the compressor here, and I just cut a slot out right here, and I just again put the breaker bar in. I scored it with my hobby knife to find out where I wanted it, and then I just put it in there, and so you can see it fits right, snaps right in there, until I have a storage place for my breaker bar now too, which is really nice that you kind of have that area that you can put it in. And what I did is, when I cut this notch out, I cut it sort of at an angle each way, so it's sort of like almost like a V-shaped so that when I press my breaker bar in there, it tightens up as the farther I press it down. And so again, this is not going anywhere, it's solid and it's not going to rattle around inside the car. In addition to that, you guys have these little cubbies right here, which you could actually stuff some more stuff in here, little things like I have a digital tire gauge that I can stuff in there too and stuff like that. So you have a little extra area to put that stuff in. Okay, so before you put your toolkit in, you're going to want to actually just make sure that you cut out any places for extra tools that you want to put in there, and then you're set to actually install it in the car. So let's go install it in the car now. Okay, so we're going to first install our lower toolbox. Now, you notice here there's a hinge here for the folding seats, and you also notice that there's, on the trim panel side, there's like these slots here. And so this holds the cargo floor in the back up here, but then it's also used for this lower tool kit, and it's designed that this kit slides in here. So these two sides here are where the toolkit is actually going to slide into and engage. So it doesn't just sit in the back here and just float around. It's actually locked into the rear of the car. And again, this goes back to the whole point. This whole system was designed to be in this car, it's just they omit it for the US vehicles. So, and then there's going to be a notch here for this to accommodate that hinge here. So all you're going to do is take your toolbox. Okay, so no tools in it. We're just going to take the toolbox. You're just going to rest it into the back here so it fits right in. And all you're going to do is push it back and engage the toolbox with these slots here. And so on each side. And so you're just going to basically let me put this on a stand here. So all you're going to do is really push it back into the slots. And that's going to engage it. And you'll feel it because as you push it in, it's going to bottom out. Okay? And now, there you have it. Your lower tool kit is installed. Now again, referencing those little pads I was talking before, if you leave them on and you have a carpeted bottom like this one, what's going to happen is right here in the front, you're going to see it, it's going to be raised up a little bit like that. You're going to see this gap, which is going to mean that your floor is not going to lay flat. And that's because it's jammed in there. And actually when I put it in and I didn't notice it the first time, the little pad actually rolled back on itself and created a little gap. And so first of all, you're going to know right away because it's going to be too hard to push in. Like, it should be snug, but when you're pushing it back, it shouldn't be hard to push in. That's the first thing you'll notice. And if they're missing, and you have a Golf that does not have a carpeted floor, then you'll know that there's something wrong because the toolbox will be too loose. It'll slide in and out. So you don't want it loose. It should be snug inside the car so that it doesn't move, basically. Okay? And if you notice back here, you can see there's a cut out the slot for the hinge. And that's pretty much it. The toolkit, lower toolbox is installed. So, and you notice it's completely, perfectly fits the contour of the indentation in the trunk floor. So, again, perfectly designed for this car. So all we gotta do now is put our tools in the toolbox. So let's go grab some of the tools and we'll show you where they all go. So these are all the tools that were on our original list. Okay, so the first thing we're going to put in is the jack itself. It only goes in one way, and that's the way all these tools are work inside this toolkit because it's specifically designed for these. So on the jack you have the point where you put the jack handle and the other side is flat. So it only goes in one way, and it can only go in the correct way as far as up and down. So the top part of the jack actually goes down and it just fits right in the spot right here, and you just push it down and that's it. Now it's installed in your toolbox. So it won't jiggle around or move or make noise. It's secure. So the second tool we have is the lug wrench itself. So that's actually on the other side of the toolbox. And again, there's a slot specifically for it right here. The head goes in and you just push it down to lock it in, and it's locked. Now all these tools, if you notice on the toolbox here, have a little cutout where you put your fingers to get the tools out when you need to. So they all have this little sort of cutout to get the tools out, which makes it easy to get them out when you need to. Okay. Now, the next tool that we're going to put in is right here, and that's the jack handle. So let me grab that. Okay, and the jack handle, again, these tools can only go in one way, so you'll figure it out. You'll see the how it's formed in the toolkit, but it just pops right in there. You push it down till it's secure, and now the jack handle is inside there. All right, and now that's all the extra tools that we had to buy. Now there's 3 more tools you have to install here, but those are part of your mobility kit that actually do come with the car. So if you go down to your mobility kit and open it up, you're going to have the tow hook. You're going to have the little hook tool to remove your lug bolt covers. And then you have a screwdriver. So this is a Phillips flathead combination screwdriver. If I can get it out of here. Okay. So this comes out and it flips around in case you want to do a flathead, etc. So you have 3 tools out of the mobility toolkit you're going to use. So we're going to take these tools. We go over to our toolkit. First one is the tow hook. So again, you can see exactly how it fits. It's only one way, fits right in. And there's the tow hook slot. The other one is the screwdriver, which goes right here. So again, just put the screwdriver in, push it in to lock it in, and there's your screwdriver. And then the last tool goes up here where it looks sort of like a little cutout for a key, and that is the little hook tool to pull up the covers, the little caps on the lug bolts. So this one fits in. This is kind of neat. It goes in the slot here, and then you can see there's a little thing here for the hook end that fits there, and it has a little indentation so you can get your fingers in there to pull it out when you need to. Alright, and that's it for the tools. Now there is one extra spot right here. It's just a rounded opening, and what this is for is if you have locking wheel bolts. So if you have the wheel locks on your car, this is for the key. So this is where you would store the key in here if you had a wheel lock. I don't have wheel locks on my car. I never liked wheel locks. They're kind of a pain when you do need to get the lugs off, especially if you're trying to change a tire on the side of the road. So I took them off and put regular lug bolts back on there. So I figured if somebody wants to steal my wheels, they can have them. That's what insurance is for. So I'm not really worried about it. But that is the spot where you would put your key for your locking wheel, for your wheel locks right there if you needed to. So they also have thought of that also. Okay, so now we're just going to put in our compressor. So our electric compressor that we cut that special spot out for. So we'll just stick that in there, and then we just have to put in our breaker bar. So we got our breaker bar here with our 17mm socket on it. And again, we're just going to push it in until it snaps in, and we're set to go. So we have all our tools in there, and again, we can put our little tire pressure gauge in there, whatever it may be, if we want to add some extra things to those. Extra space here, we have these little cubbies right here. So, but that's the entire lower toolbox and toolkit installed. So our next step is going to be, before we can actually put in the spare tire, we actually have to replace this trim panel right here. So this trim panel right here is for US versions, and even though, if you notice here, it actually has a little indentation to accept the spare tire, down at the bottom here it needs to be cut out right here so that the spare tire can actually sit all the way down against the bottom of the floor here, and it can't do that right now. It's going to be actually raised up a little bit because of this here. Now, some guys have just taken a Dremel tool and, you know, marked the line where the tire rides there and cut that out. That's not me. I like doing things the right way because, again, this is designed to be in here from the factory. So they do make the correct factory trim piece to replace the one that you have in your car. Looks identical, except it has the correct shape and cutout for the spare tire. So that's the next thing that we're going to do, which is remove this trim piece and install the new trim piece. Alright, so next we have to get this trim piece installed, and so in order to figure out how to remove it, we can just look at the new piece to see how it's attached. So if we look underneath here, we can see a couple different things. First of all, we just got some of these hooks that run the length of it. Those would just hook into, obviously, slots in the body, so nothing big there. But the main points are right here, these 4 silver clips. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those obviously just clip down into the body, so just a yank, really hard yank up should release those clips. But the main thing is on the end here. If we look at it from sort of the profile view, you can see here we've got sort of a hook clip right here in the end, and then another plastic one right here. Now this should just pop right out, but this hook one on the end here, if you can see it right there, is the one that's going to give you the most trouble. You can see it hooks into the body there, so that's not just going to pop out probably without breaking. Now, luckily, because we're replacing this entire trim panel, it doesn't really matter if we break the old one, but I'd still like to keep the old one intact if possible, just because if I ever saw the car in the future and I want to take out the whole spare tire kit and sell it separately and just put the car back to the way it was from the factory, I could still do that. So what we're going to do is, you have a choice here. You can either try to get your trim tool kit in here and just sort of pry against that a little bit, or you could actually just squeeze the whole thing. You can see as you squeeze it, as you're yanking it up, and that will probably release it, help release it too. So either or, it's going to be these 2 end ones, one on each end, that are going to be the ones that are going to give you the trouble getting this trim piece out. But that's how it's held in. So for the most part, it's a yank up, but if you get your little trim tool, or try to squeeze it first. Just squeeze it and then see if it'll come up, and that will get your trim piece off. So let's go to the car and see if we can get this released, and then we can just pop this one in, which you can see is going to be really easy. The only thing you want to be careful of is right here, this little slot. This is a spring-loaded door that comes up and down when you open and close the trunk. So just make sure that your pin that's in here that the latch has to attach to is completely centered in here before you pop it down and lock it in. That's the most important part right there. So let's go ahead and pop our old one out and then see if we can get this one in. Alright, so we're going to try to pull this trim off. It's not going to be easy. Got a little trim tool, maybe to help us. Got some work gloves on just in case as you're yanking it up, because something's going to let go, you could catch your hand and cut it. So there we go. So it just pulled up once you got that one side released. Once you get one side released, you're pretty good. Just pull it up and you should be able to get it out. Now once you get down to this end here, just take your trim tool to try and pop that last one out, because that's the one that's holding it in, basically, that one piece. And then once you get that out, you know, it's this one that is really the bugger. And you can see here, it just clips into that plastic hole right there. So you can see that with just a little bit, you just sort of yank it, and you got your piece off here. It's still all intact. So we got our old piece off, now we can just put the new one on. So we're just gonna take it and we're gonna align it. So again, in the body here, there are some receivers. So all these little slots right here. Just have to make sure everything is in its slots when you're putting it in. And everything should just line up correctly. You're going to make sure that this right here is completely centered when it goes down. You don't want that off. And then just make sure the bottom. So you want to put the bottom in sort of first to make sure it engages in all its clips. So put the bottom in first and then try to pull out on it from the inside to make sure it's all engaged. And then once you're sure that's engaged, then you're ready to go. And you can push on your door a little bit, make sure it clears your pin. And you're centered there perfectly, so you don't have any problems with that. And on each side you can kind of give a, if you look at the gap between the two trim panels and just verify on each side, you can see this side there's less, so you want to move it over a little bit. Just so both sides basically have the same gap on the trim panel. So you can kind of push it almost in and just see where it is and then just adjust it till you get exactly where you want it. And then you're just going to click, push down on it, and that is going to put your trim panel inside there. And then what you're going to do is take your trim tool and get your weather stripping here, which is going to be trapped underneath here, and get this out so you can push your final clip in. And now you can see that has snapped in right there. And then you're just going to sort of roll your weather stripping out to get it underneath on top of the edge. Make sure it's all covered right there. Everything down below is solid, so we're good there. So we're just going to roll out our weather stripping first. You can use a trim tool to get it out of the way first. But you want to make sure you don't rip it. This side's actually not even engaged over here, so we're just going to roll it back till we get over to that edge. It wants to roll down. It's pretty tough, so just have to get it over the edge. Okay, here we go. So before you lock it down, just roll your weather strip over the edge. Just get it in place. So we're just getting it rolled over completely. Okay, now that we have it rolled over, now we can snap it in. And you want to hear hard clicks. Don't want soft clicks. This should be completely solid like it was before. You'll have a little bit of room to wiggle back and forth. Okay, so there we have it. You can see our little bit of gap here. A little bit of gap here is even on both sides. Our little trim piece clears our pin here, so that's all okay there. It's nice and solid all the way around, just like it was before. And if you go into the bottom here and you try to pull it out, it will not pull out, which means you have all your little hooks engaged. So that's it. So we have our new trim panel installed, and as you can see on the inside here, it has a nice cutout. Hopefully you can see that camera. It's really dark in the car here, but there's a nice cutout here for the spare tire. All right, we're almost done, so all we gotta do is put our spare tire in and then our subwoofer, and we're good. So let me go get the spare tire. Okay, so we placed the spare tire in the car. Now before you put it in, because you have to turn it upside down so that you can put the subwoofer in the cavity here, make sure you check the tire pressure because the valve will be on the other side. So check it and inflate it to the proper pressure before you put it in. And then also make sure your little connector here for your subwoofer does not get trapped underneath the actual tire itself. So make sure that's free. And then you just put it in, and actually when you put it in, it fits in there like perfectly. The ridges in the bottom of the floor pan actually just perfectly fit it in. It won't even move around at all. And if you notice, it's not touching on the front here. It's also not touching the foam in the back. So it's perfectly centered. So all we gotta do now is get the subwoofer and center that in the middle, put it in, and tighten it down. Okay, so make sure your tire is basically centered on your post there, and then you're going to put your subwoofer right over top of it here. It's going to fit right inside the tire perfectly. And you can move it around just a little bit if it's not perfectly centered on this pin here. But once you have it, obviously there's an arrow here that points to the front, so make sure that's set that way. And then just take your big plastic nut, put it on. Alright, so then take your connector for your subwoofer and just go ahead and reattach. Alright, so there you have your floor. And of course you can lift it up if you ever need to and put some stuff down there. I have to put this little license plate here because I have a custom vanity tag, and Delaware requires that you have the original tag also in the car at any time in case you get pulled over. So I'll have to put it in here. I think I'm going to slide it underneath the toolbox a little bit right here. And that will keep it nice and secure, but that's just something I have to have in there for Delaware. And you still have some little space right here and on this side where you can put other stuff in there, any kind of other storage types of things. So this is the bag that was the mobility toolkit, and in here I'm just keeping a extra quart of oil just in case I need it on the road, since it's a nice little bag and it holds it, so it'll fit in this area really nicely. So you can see right there. And that's it. And now we're going to put our cargo mat back in. Okay, since we're talking about the trunk area, or the boot area of the car here, Volkswagen sells a couple of different accessories for protecting the floor of your boot. So you can either do like a Muddy Buddy rubberized cargo mat that goes in the back here, or you can do something called the Volkswagen Cargo Protection System, which is the one I purchased. So what that consists of is this, which is a big carpeted cargo mat that protects it, but it has, when you put it in your car here, it actually has, get a close up here, it has a raised lip that goes around the whole thing, so that keeps anything like dirt, gravel, whatever you're transporting inside the mat, so you can just pull the mat out and then you basically can dump it out and clean it outside the car. So that's kind of nice. But the system also comes with these things called cargo blocks. And so what these are blocks that you can just put down on the floor of the car, and they stick to the mat, and you can use it to keep things from rolling around in the back of your car. And it actually works really well. So let me go grab those. Okay, so you get 4 of these, what they call cargo blocks, which are basically 90-degree corners, and they have like sort of a Velcro bottom on them. And so the way they work is you just place them wherever you want inside the trunk area on the mat, and it'll stay there. You don't even have to push them down. So even if I just drop them like right here, that's all you have to do. If I try to pull it up, you see how it sticks to the mat. You don't even have to push it really hard. And so you can put these wherever you want to create a gate or sort of an area where you can put stuff, and you can do it at any angle. So if you have something weird shaped or something like that, you can put them however you want to, and then you put whatever you want inside there so it doesn't roll around the trunk of your car. And what's nice about these is you can, just pull them up and change them around to any size or shape that you need, depending what you're trying to haul. I use it all the time for groceries, so I just put my grocery bags inside the blocks and they don't roll around, and I can still kind of drive fast when I'm driving home. I don't have to like slow down around corners and stuff because it all stays inside the cargo blocks. And you can make any shape that you want with them basically. You can also buy extra blocks too, so they do sell them separately. You don't have to get the whole kit. You can just buy more blocks in sets of 4 if you want to have like 2 different areas that you want to block off or whatever you want to do. Now, Volkswagen, in my review video, if you remember, I told you they have these little hooks right here, like these half-moon hooks. There's one there, and there's actually one way underneath here. You have to sort of almost reach under to get to it, which is a really bad spot. Those are supposed to be for grocery bags. Well, first of all, they're not really good hooks to begin with, so the grocery bags just want to sort of slip off of them when you're going around curves and stuff. And then this one is so far back, you're actually, you know, cutting your hand on the plastic and everything else trying to get back there to hook it on, and then the bag sort of lays over this hump, so it's not actually just hanging down straight. So they're kind of like useless as far as those go. So if you are going to get a system to protect your cargo floor, you might want to just get the cargo protection system with the blocks, and they're really versatile and really easy to use. And like I said, you don't even have to push them, you just lay them on and they grip. And then of course you just peel them off, and then you can, you know, move them someplace else depending what you're trying to do. So that's just a quick plug for the cargo protection system, which I think is actually pretty well designed. Alright, so let's go over our parts list. So basically you're going to need that lower toolbox, which is that foam piece. You're going to need that trim panel, which is the cover for the lock carrier, the jack handle crank, the actual spare tire itself, the lug wrench. This jack strap is something I didn't show in the video. That is an optional piece that you can get. I just got it because, again, I like everything to be complete, but it's just a strap that goes around the jack with a buckle on it to tighten it down, to keep the jack from jumping up and down in the toolbox. I haven't had any problem with it driving around, so it's probably not required, but it is a piece that's there. And in the lower toolbox, in the foam toolbox, it actually has a channel that's cut out around the jack that this rides in, so that when you put the strap around it, it doesn't cause the toolbox to raise off the floor or anything, because there's a channel that the strap actually rides in. So it's actually made for this strap. So that's optional if you want to get it, but it just secures the actual jack itself, probably because it's the heaviest piece back there. And then there's 3 tools: the tow hook, the combination screwdriver, and the lug cover hook tool that come with the car in the mobility toolkit, so you don't have to buy those separately. So these are the part numbers for these pieces. You got to be careful because these part numbers, you got to be exact, because one little letter makes a difference between Volkswagen, between like the US model and the European, and we want the European for these first 2 pieces because those are only available on European cars. So the lower toolbox and the cover lock carrier you can get at multiple places. You can just verify you have the right number and everything looks okay. Again, this is for a 2018 Mark 7.5 Golf R, but I know that it will work on Mark 7s also, because that's the original part number for them. And then these other ones with the jack and everything, I got these all off either the websites or the item itself when I got it. The jack is the only one. There might be a couple extra letters on the end of this one that are not necessary, but since it was on the jack, I just put them all there, so you'll be able to tell if you got the right part or not. All right, so if we go over to here where I got my parts from, so originally I ordered the lower toolbox and the cover lock carrier from ECS Tuning because they had them both in stock and they were the correct ones. But unfortunately ECS Tuning was out of stock on the trim panel, and instead of waiting, which I should have, I ordered it from eacca.com instead, which is another place that you can get it from. Now they're located in Latvia, so they're in Europe, and obviously it's going to, when you order through them, it's really no longer than ordering it through ECS Tuning if they have to get it. So if ECS Tuning had it in stock, I would have gotten it a lot quicker. But because they didn't, and they had to actually get it from Europe, probably, they were like another 2-week delay. So I decided to just order from the EACCA because they have next day shipping. The problem is they had to order the trim panel too from Volkswagen, so they took 10 days to get it from Volkswagen, and then they do ship FedEx 3 to 5 day into the US. And then actually once they shipped it, it only took like, I think it was 3 days and it got here. So they're really quick as far as their shipping goes. And as far as the price goes, their price is a little cheaper for the part. Shipping's a little bit more expensive, and it's vice versa for ECS. So it turned out there was only $1 difference between the two, whether I got it in the US or I got it from Latvia. So EACCA is pretty well known. They have great communication. They will answer your emails by the next business day if you have any questions. So don't be afraid to order from them. They may just take a little longer depending if they have the part right there in their warehouse or if they have to get it from the supplier, depending. The only reason I didn't order all those two pieces from the DAP, Deutsche Auto Parts, is because they didn't carry them. So I had to order everything else, which was the tools themselves, the jack and all the tools from DAP. Now, the reason I got them from there is because DAP had all the correct part numbers and the pictures all matched everything, whereas on the ECS tuning site, they actually had a complete kit you could buy that has everything in it, all the tools, the spare tire, etc. But the problem was in the picture that they had the wrong jack for my car. So I wasn't sure if it was just a website problem where they just had an old picture or if it was the wrong jack, and I didn't want to deal with all that. So I just decided to order all the tools from Deutsche Auto Parts, which is shopdap.com if you want the website. So there's the 3 websites I ordered from. So as far as the prices go, total parts price was only $293. So you can see the prices. The spare tire obviously is the most expensive piece. The shipping actually was, you know, a whole nother level of cost because it was $106 just in shipping for all these different things. Now, I did order them sort of separately at different times, so that made a difference. Maybe I could have gotten some combined shipping a little cheaper, but it's probably not going to be that much cheaper. It's still probably going to be at least $80 in shipping. So total cost was $399, or, you know, basically $400. And that's what it's going to cost you to retrofit the complete kit inside a 2018 Mark 7.5 Golf R. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and it helps you out if you want to do that on your car. And look for some upcoming also new videos coming up on the Golf R. And otherwise, that's it. Peace.